Why did no one hear her footsteps as she entered the briefing room? The men around the table were already talking over each other, maps spread, pens tapping, eyes narrowed at the red circles drawn across the valley. Radios hissed faintly in the corner. Coffee cups steamed in trembling hands. Yet when she walked in, it was as if she were invisible, like the weight she carried was hers alone, unseen, unspoken. She paused at the doorway, the fluorescent light catching her tired face. She had been awake for nearly 30 hours, her hands still carrying the faint tremor of adrenaline from the last patrol. But she said nothing, just slid into a chair at the far end of the table, unnoticed, uninvited. That had always been the way. In her world, silence was armor. The commander's voice cut through the clutter. The convoy was ambushed here. He tapped the map sharply, knuckle landing against the paper hard enough to leave a crease. They knew the route. They were waiting. A hush fell, betrayal. The word wasn't spoken, but everyone felt it. A leak. Someone had known too much. Her eyes scanned the men around the table, their jaws tight, their eyes heavy. She could sense the anger beneath their calm. But what no one knew, not yet, was that she had been there, crouched in the mud just outside the kill zone, watching the ambush unfold in brutal precision. She had seen the firelight bloom, had counted the shots, had memorized the angles. And she had seen something else, something she hadn't told anyone. A face. Not of the enemy, not of a stranger, a face that should not have been there at all. The room blurred around her as the commander continued. Orders barked, assignments given, but her mind replayed that moment, slow, searing, unbearable, the recognition, the disbelief. She blinked hard and returned to the room, her jaw tightening. They didn't know yet. They didn't know that the mission ahead wasn't just about recovering territory or securing a road. For her, it was about uncovering the truth and confronting the ghost that had walked out of her past, now standing among the enemy. When the meeting ended, chairs scraped back and boots thudded against the floor. Men gathered in pairs, muttering about supplies, about weapons, about timing. No one asked her where she had been last night or what she had seen. They never did, but she didn't mind. Being underestimated meant she could carry her burden without interference. She stepped outside. The cold night air struck her lungs sharp. Above, the stars burned unbothered by the smoke of distant fires. She leaned against the wall, pulling her jacket tighter. The sound of laughter drifted from the barracks. A card game. Someone strummed a guitar, trying to drown out fear. For a second, she envied their escape, but for her, there was no escape. Her hand brushed the chain around her neck, the small locket tucked beneath her shirt. Inside, a photo. Faded, worn. A reminder of why she had chosen this path, why she endured the silence, why she walked willingly into fire. Her brother's face. She hadn't spoken his name in years. Not since the day the knock came at her parents' door. Not since the folded flag was handed over with scripted condolences. He had been older, stronger, her anchor. His death had driven her here, to the mud, to the silence, to the battlefield that had taken him. And now, against all reason, she had seen him again. Alive. Or at least, someone who wore his face. She shut her eyes tight as if willing the memory away, but it stayed. The firelight had cast his features sharp, unmistakable, the same scar along the jawline, the same tilt of the head. It couldn't be. And yet it was. Her chest tightened. If she told the commander what she saw, they'd dismiss her. If she stayed silent, the truth might burn everything down. She had always been the quiet one, the overlooked one. But now her silence was dangerous. The next morning she was already strapped in the chopper before dawn. The blades roared overhead, drowning out thought, shaking the metal beneath her boots. Across from her sat Alvarez, the medic, eyes heavy with exhaustion but carrying a grin. He caught her gaze, raised his brows. Another day in paradise. She almost smiled, almost. Beside him, Malik, the radio operator, clutched his headset like a lifeline. He had 2 kids back home, always showing pictures of them during long nights. His hands never stopped moving, nervous, restless. He feared silence. She feared what silence revealed. They lifted off. The valley opened beneath them, raw and scarred. Villages scattered like bones, rivers cutting like veins. Every turn carried echoes of fire and blood. Her hand tightened on her rifle, not because of fear of what lay ahead, but because she knew the face she might see again, the one that had haunted her through the night. The mission was clear: move into the valley, secure the compound, recover what was stolen. But for her, the mission was blurred by something darker, something heavier. If it truly was him, if her brother had survived only to stand on the other side of the war, then every truth she had built her life on would shatter. And yet she said nothing. The chopper dipped, banking hard. The men grabbed at straps, muttering curses. Dust rose as they descended into the landing zone. The valley swallowed them whole. The ramp dropped. She was the first to step out, boots sinking into dust. The air was sharp, dry, laced with smoke. In the distance, faint echoes of gunfire rolled through the hills. Her figure stood in the doorway, backlit by fire, unshaken by the chaos ahead. Because this was her war. Not theirs. Not the commander. Hers. The patrol moved forward, shadows stretched long under the rising sun. Each footstep carried weight, each silence pressing harder. She kept her eyes scanning the ridges, the broken walls, the burned-out husks of homes. But in her chest, her heart pounded for something else, an answer she wasn't sure she wanted. Would she find him? And if she did, what would she do? She had always believed her brother died with honor, a soldier caught in duty's grip. That belief had been her compass, her reason to step into this world herself. But if he lived, and worse, if he lived as the enemy, then what had all of this been for? What had she been for? A crack of gunfire split the silence. The team dropped instinctively, boots scattering against rocks. Dust rose, choking the air. The echo bounced from ridge to ridge, impossible to trace. She pressed into the ground, heart hammering, ears straining. Then silence. The kind of silence that carried teeth. Her breath slowed. She scanned the ridge line, finger poised on the trigger. Movement flickered just for a second. A shadow slipping behind stone, too far to be sure, too close to ignore. Her commander's voice cut through the radio. Stay low, push forward. They advanced inch by inch, every sound magnified. A rock shifting, a cough swallowed, the whisper of fabric against stone. She stayed at the front, the others trailing, trusting her instincts even if they didn't say it out loud. She had been their eyes more than once, the one who caught what others missed. And now, every nerve in her body screamed that someone was watching. And maybe, just maybe, it was him. Her pulse hammered so hard she felt it in her fingertips. She swallowed the lump rising in her throat. Not now, not here. They pressed forward, clearing the ruins, rifles sweeping. But the shadow was gone. Only the wind remained, carrying dust and the faintest smell of smoke. Still, she couldn't shake it, the sensation of being seen, known. When the squad regrouped, Alvarez whispered, "You okay?" She nodded too quickly, "Fine." But inside, she was anything but fine. Because for the first time since her brother's funeral, she wasn't sure what she believed anymore. And belief was the only thing that had ever kept her alive. What sound was that? A stone shifted, faint but sharp against the silence. She froze mid-step, her rifle angled, breath caught in her chest. The rest of the team followed her pause, instinctively mirroring her tension. For a heartbeat, the valley itself seemed to hold its breath with them. The sun had climbed higher, painting the ridge lines in harsh, unforgiving light. Every shadow felt deliberate. Every gust of wind seemed to whisper movement. Her eyes narrowed, scanning, waiting for a flicker of motion against the jagged rock. But nothing came. She lowered her rifle slightly, though her heart refused to calm. That old instinct gnawed at her, the same one that had saved them before. She wanted to shout to the others, to insist on circling wide to break from the commander's plan, but silence held her back. Always silence. "Move," the order came again over the radio, stern, impatient. She obeyed, but inside, her chest ached with unease. The patrol pressed on, weaving through collapsed mud walls and scorched timbers. Once these had been homes. A child's toy lay half buried in dust. A door creaked loosely on one hinge, the wind pushing it open, then back again, a mournful rhythm. She caught herself staring at it, at the emptiness behind it, before forcing her eyes forward. Alvarez noticed her pause. He gave her a quick look, brows raised. A question without words, "You good?" She nodded once sharply. The less she revealed, the safer she felt, not for her body, for her mind. But inside she wasn't safe at all. Because the face she had seen in firelight still burned behind her eyes, refusing to fade. She wanted to believe it was a trick of smoke, a cruel illusion. But illusions didn't carry scars, only she would recognize. Her brother. Her mind fought to recall every detail. The shape of his shoulders, the exact sound of his laugh, the day they buried him, or thought they did. Had there even been a body? No, just fragments, shredded uniform, a name carved into the roll of the dead. She remembered holding her mother as she cried, remembered the priest's voice trembling as if even he doubted the words he was made to speak. So what if they had been wrong? What if he had been alive all along? The thought threatened to unravel her, thread by thread. She tightened her grip on the rifle, grounding herself in the present, because the mission didn't care about ghosts. The squad halted at a narrow alley between two walls. Malik raised his hand, listening intently to the hiss of static in his headset. A transmission was bleeding through, broken but urgent. Foreign words crackled, clipped, and rushed. Malik's face tightened. "They're close," he muttered, "real close." The commander's voice snapped again, "Keep moving." So they did, step by step. Her senses screamed louder with each footfall. The silence was wrong. Villages like this weren't empty. There should have been dogs barking, doors creaking, pots clattering, children crying. But there was only the shuffle of their boots and the wind whistling over stone. It was too clean, too staged. A trap. The realization hit her like ice in her lungs. She opened her mouth to speak, but the explosion cut her off. The ground beneath them erupted in fire and dust. The blast threw her back, the world spinning, sound shredding into a high-pitched ringing. She hit the ground hard, grit tearing her palms, heat biting her skin. Voices shouted, muffled through the ringing. Shapes scrambled in smoke. Gunfire cracked, ricocheting off stone. She blinked furiously, coughing, forcing her body to move even as her ears screamed. Her rifle was gone. She crawled for it blindly, hands scraping through dust until it found the familiar weight of metal. She clutched it tight, rolled to cover, heart slamming in her chest. Through the haze, Alvarez was dragging Malik to safety, blood running down the radio man's arm. The commander barked orders no one could hear clearly. Muzzle flashes lit the smoke like lightning. She pressed her back to the wall, inhaled sharply, forced herself to focus. Her vision steadied, the ringing softened. The fight became real again. Shapes moved in the smoke. Shadows darted, rifles flashing. She fired, sharp and controlled, each shot echoing off stone. Someone cried out, fell. Another shadow retreated. The team rallied, pushing into defensive positions. Alvarez shouted for bandages. Malik gritted his teeth through pain. The commander cursed into the radio. And then she saw him. Through the thinning smoke across the alley, a figure stood watching. Not firing, not moving, just watching. Her chest stopped cold. The scar, the jawline, the tilt of the head. It was him. Her brother. For a heartbeat, she forgot the rifle in her hands, forgot the chaos, the noise, the blood. All she saw was his eyes locked on hers, unflinching. A lifetime of memories surged at once. Him teaching her how to ride a bike, how to throw a punch, how to never let anyone silence her. Him laughing in the kitchen, his hand ruffling her hair. Him walking out the door in uniform, promising to come home. But those eyes now, those eyes weren't the same. There was no warmth, no recognition, only a cold, deliberate stare. Her breath caught, her hand trembled. She wanted to scream his name, to demand the truth, to shatter the silence, but no sound left her throat. And then he turned, vanished into smoke. Her heart lurched as if yanked from her chest. She stumbled forward, desperate, but Alvarez grabbed her arm, yanking her back just as a burst of gunfire tore into the wall where she would have been. "Stay with us," Alvarez shouted, eyes blazing. She froze, torn between instinct and survival. Her chest ached with the weight of what she had seen. She couldn't speak it, not here, not now. No one would believe her, not until she had proof. The fight dragged on, the squad clawing their way out of the kill zone. By the time the gunfire faded, the air reeked of smoke and blood. 2 men were wounded, Malik worst of all. Their supplies were torn, their comms fried. The village was silent again, except for their ragged breaths. The commander ordered a fallback, but his voice carried strain. The mission had shifted. What was meant to be recovery had turned into survival. She moved with them, automatic, mechanical, but inside her mind was chaos. She had seen him, not a ghost, not a dream, him. But why hadn't he spoken? Why hadn't he reached for her? Why had his eyes looked through her like she was no one at all? That night they holed up in a half-collapsed building, walls cracked and ceilings open to the stars. Malik lay pale, Alvarez working frantically to slow the bleeding. The commander sat in silence, his face shadowed, as if already replaying how he would report this failure. She sat alone near the doorway, staring into the dark. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. For years she had built her identity on one belief: her brother had died a hero. That belief had driven her every step, every sacrifice, but now the ground beneath her was gone. If he lived, he wasn't the brother she remembered, and if he wasn't her brother anymore, then who was she? She closed her eyes, clutching the locket until it dug into her skin. 1,000 questions pressed against her ribs, too heavy to breathe. She whispered into the silence, not for anyone to hear, not even sure if she believed the words herself. "Why didn't you come home?" The only answer was the wind through the broken roof. But she knew one thing: she couldn't stay silent forever. The truth was out there, walking in enemy colors. And one way or another she would find it. Why did his eyes look through her, as if she were no one? That question sat like a stone in her chest long after the gunfire faded. The memory of his stare replayed again and again, the cold recognition, the silence between them, the way he had vanished without a word. It ate at her more than the ache in her bones, more than the smoke still clawing at her lungs. She should have been sleeping. The squad needed rest. But she sat awake in the dark ruins, back against the cracked wall, her rifle across her lap. Outside, the wind scraped across broken stone, carrying dust that whispered through the gaps in the ceiling. Every sound fed her nerves, every shadow teased her fears. Alvarez stirred nearby, his head nodding as exhaustion dragged at him. Malik groaned softly, fevered, his bandages stained. The commander hadn't said a word since they pulled back. He just sat against the far wall, eyes hidden in shadow, his silence thicker than hers. And her. She was trapped in a prison of memory. She remembered the day of the funeral, the way the flag was folded so precisely. She remembered her mother clutching it like it was a lifeline. She remembered standing at the edge of the grave, her fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms until blood ran. She remembered telling herself, he died for something. But if he hadn't died at all, if he had crossed over to the other side, what did that mean for her? Her jaw locked tight. She couldn't let herself cry, not here, not with them so close. A faint crunch outside froze her thoughts. Her eyes flicked to the doorway, breath catching. The night was black, the kind that swallowed everything. She listened harder than she ever had. There it was again, Slow, careful, someone moving outside. She raised her rifle, finger sliding into place. Her pulse hammered so loudly she swore it would give her away. Another crunch, closer. Her breath came shallow, every nerve screaming. She glanced at the others, none of them stirred. Alvarez was out cold, Malik delirious, the commander sunk in thought. If she called out, she risked panic. If she stayed silent, she risked being too late. The footsteps stopped. She held her breath so long her lungs burned. Then, barely audible, a whisper, not in her language, a voice too low to place but close. Her finger tightened on the trigger. She could end it right now, fire into the dark, scatter the silence. But then her heart stopped. She recognized the cadence, the way the words bent, the rhythm of the tone. It was him. She lowered her rifle by a fraction, disbelief pulling harder than fear. The whisper came again, fatting into the night. She couldn't sit still. She couldn't. She slid silently toward the doorway, her body moving before her mind caught up. Every step felt like betrayal of the squad behind her, but her chest was burning with need. She had to see. She had to know. The night air hit her skin, cold and raw. She slipped into the ruins, her boots soundless on the dust. The stars overhead were sharp as glass, the valley spread wide and hollow. She followed the sound, breath shallow, rifle tight against her chest. There, movement by the collapsed wall, a shadow. She froze, eyes straining. And then she saw him. Her brother. No mist, no firelight to confuse her, just him in the moon's pale glow. His hair longer, his beard rough, his uniform foreign, but the face unmistakable. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream his name, to run to him, but she couldn't. The weight of his uniform crushed her. He stood on the other side now. He looked at her, not with surprise, not with joy, with something colder, like a man torn between memory and duty. "Why?" she whispered, so soft it was barely sound. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted a hand, half warning, half farewell. And then he slipped back into the dark, leaving her heart clawing at emptiness. She stood frozen, staring into the night long after he vanished. Her hands shook so violently she had to clutch her rifle to still them. Behind her, Alvarez's voice cut through the quiet. "What the hell are you doing out here?" She spun, pulse spiking. Alvarez stood in the doorway, rifle slung, his eyes heavy but sharp. She stopped, the truth tangled in her throat. "You can't wander off. Not tonight. Not with Malik bleeding out and God knows who's circling us. Get back inside." She wanted to argue, to tell him, to beg him to believe her, but the words wouldn't come. So she just nodded, hollow, and followed him back in. Inside, the air was heavy with smoke and sweat. Malik's breathing was shallow, Alvarez working tirelessly to keep him alive. The commander glanced at her as she sat down again, his eyes narrowing slightly. Suspicion, or maybe just exhaustion. She stared at the cracked floor, her mind screaming. She had seen him again. Alive. But what if no one ever believed her? What if, when the time came, they forced her to choose between the brother she once loved and the team she had sworn to protect? The night dragged into morning, each hour stretched thin. By dawn, Malik was still alive, but barely. The commander finally spoke, his voice low, rough. "We can't hold here, we move." Alvarez swore under his breath. He won't survive a march. He won't survive staying either, the commander snapped. They'll come back stronger. The squad moved with grim resolve, packing what little they had left. Malik was slung between Alvarez and another soldier, his face pale, his lips cracked. Every step was agony for him, but no one said it out loud. She kept to the front, her eyes scanning ridges and ruins, her chest heavy with dread. Each shadow could be an ambush. Each silence could hide her brother. The valley stretched wide ahead, unforgiving. They walked in silence, boots grinding dust, weapons heavy. The sun beat down, cruel and unrelenting. By midday, Malik collapsed. Alvarez dropped to his knees, cursing, working frantically. The commander barked for speed, for strength, but his voice cracked as he said it. Everyone knew. Malik was slipping away. She stood a few paces off, scanning the ridges. Her throat tightened as she listened to Malik's ragged breaths. He had shown her pictures once, his kids, both grinning wide with missing teeth. He had joked about how they'd never listened to him, how his wife would roll her eyes at his stories when he finally came home. Now he might never go home at all. Her chest ached. She wanted to kneel beside him to tell him he wasn't alone, but she stayed at her post, eyes on the horizon, because that was her role, silent, unseen, protecting without words. Malik's eyes flickered to her once, glassy but searching. He tried to smile. "Don't let me be forgotten." Her lips trembled. She gave a single nod, nothing more. Minutes later, his chest stilled. Alvarez bowed his head, tears sliding unchecked. The commander cursed under his breath, a wordless sound, frustration mixing with grief. The squad carried on, leaving Malik beneath the broken stones of the valley. Her silence weighed heavier than ever. She had seen her brother twice now, both times alive, both times untouchable, and she had watched Malik die, carrying only a plea to not be forgotten. Her heart split in two, one side mourning, the other burning with a question that wouldn't let her rest. Why was her brother here? And what had he become? The answer was waiting in the valley, and she would walk through fire to find it. Dawn bled into the valley like a wound. The sun rose hard and unkind, spilling fire over shattered rock and bone-dry earth. They marched in silence, every step dragging the weight of Malik's absence. His grave was shallow, marked by nothing but a pile of stones. Already the dust was swallowing it. Already the world was trying to forget. But she couldn't. Every image was carved into her, the way his chest stilled, the way Alvarez clung to him, the way he had looked at her in those final breaths. "Don't let me be forgotten." The words rang like a vow in her ears, louder than the commander's orders, sharper than the echo of gunfire. Her silence had never felt heavier. Alvarez walked just behind her, his steps uneven, his grief raw and unhidden. He muttered prayers beneath his breath, words half-broken by anger. The commander led at the front, a shadow in the glare of the sun, his back straight but his movements taut. And her. She was torn in half, between the living squad who stumbled forward and the ghost of her brother, alive but untouchable. Every ridge they passed, every shadow that stretched too long, her eyes searched. She prayed she wouldn't see him, and at the same time she ached for it. The valley was a graveyard of silence. No birds, no wind, only boots grinding dirt and hearts breaking with every step. By midday they reached a choke point, a narrow pass between jagged cliffs. The commander halted, his hand raised, his eyes scanning the ridges. She dropped to one knee instantly, rifle up, gaze sweeping the high ground. Her chest tightened, every instinct screamed. The silence wasn't empty, it was waiting. And then it came. The crack of a rifle, stone shattered near her head. "Contact," Alvarez roared, dragging Malik's old rifle up like it was a part of his body. The squad scattered, diving for what little cover the rocks offered. Gunfire poured down from the cliffs, a storm of bullets tearing the dust into clouds. Her body moved before her mind. She rolled behind an outcrop, rifle braced, eyes locking on muzzle flashes above. Her hands were steady, her breathing slow. She squeezed one shot, another, dropping shadows one by one. But then her heart lurched. Through the smoke, through the fire, she saw him. Her brother, standing tall on the ridge, rifle in hand, commanding with gestures she remembered from childhood games, games where he'd pretended to lead armies, and she'd followed with laughter. Now those same movements directed fire against her. Her chest ripped apart. She couldn't pull the trigger. The commander's voice thundered through the chaos. "Focus your fire, push through." Alvarez shouted curses, spraying rounds upward, his grief burning into fury. The squad fought like cornered wolves, every shot desperate, every breath a gamble. And she was frozen. Her brother's eyes found hers through the smoke, locking her in place. For a heartbeat the battlefield faded, the gunfire muffled, the dust stilled, the world narrowed to the stare between them. His expression was carved from stone, not anger, not joy, something harder. A test. Her throat burned. She wanted to scream his name, to beg him to stop, to demand answers. But the words died behind her teeth. Her silence was her prison, her only shield. Then he gave a signal, and the fire shifted. Bullets rained not on her, but on Alvarez. She moved instinctively, throwing herself across the dust, dragging Alvarez down as rounds sparked around them. His eyes went wide, his breath ragged. "You saved me," he gasped, disbelief in his voice. But she barely heard him. Her gaze snapped back to the ridge. Her brother was gone, again. The fight raged on, brutal and consuming. The squad clawed their way through the pass, bodies pressed to stone, every inch bought with blood and bullets. One by one, the enemy fire thinned. The silence returned, but it was the silence of the dead, heavy and merciless. The commander gathered them with sharp gestures, his face like granite. "We move now." Alvarez staggered beside her, sweat and dust streaking his face. He glanced at her, his voice low, almost breaking. "You saw him again, didn't you?" Her chest tightened. She said nothing, but in her silence he found his answer. He cursed softly, dragging a hand down his face. You can't keep this in. If the commander finds out." Her eyes snapped to his, sharp as a blade. "Don't." He stopped, swallowed, nodded. The squad moved on, leaving blood and bodies behind. The sun sank lower, shadows stretching long across the valley floor. Every step was agony, every breath filled with dust and doubt. By nightfall they reached a ruined village, nothing but skeleton walls and blackened stone. The commander ordered a halt. They took shelter in what remained of a house, its roof half collapsed, its windows shattered. She sat apart, rifle across her knees, her mind a storm. Malik's plea, Alvarez's suspicion, her brother's eyes, and the unbearable silence between them all. The commander broke it first, his voice low, cutting through the dark. "They're not just random fighters, they're trained, coordinated, someone's leading them." His eyes flicked to each face, hard and searching. "We find that leader, we end this." Her heart stuttered. She already knew who it was. But her silence chained her. The squad nodded grimly, none of them daring to speak the doubts clawing at them. They ate little, drank less, their bodies breaking under the weight of the march. One by one, they drifted into restless sleep. She stayed awake, eyes on the dark, every nerve alive. And then, like before, she heard it. A whisper. Her breath caught. She rose silently, slipping into the night, her boots soundless on broken stone. The village was a graveyard of echoes. She followed the sound through shadow and ruin, her heart hammering. And there, at the edge of the village, he stood. Her brother. Closer than ever. The moon carved his face in silver, his eyes burning with a fire she couldn't name. She raised her rifle halfway, torn between duty and blood. Her voice broke free in a whisper, raw and trembling. "Why?" For the first time he answered. "Because you chose them." The words struck like a blade. Her chest seized. Her knees almost buckled. She wanted to scream, to deny it, to tell him she had no choice. But her silence crushed her as it always did. He stepped closer, his voice low, sharp as glass. "They are not your family. They never were. I was. And you left me. Now you wear their flag, carry their rifle, fight their wars against me." Her eyes burned, tears she refused to shed. Her throat ached with words she couldn't form. He reached out, his hand hovering inches from hers. You can still choose, leave them, come with me, or, his gaze hardened, stay and die with them. The night hung still, her heart tearing in two. Behind her, Alvarez's voice shattered it. Who the hell are you talking to? She spun, panic searing her veins. Alvarez stood a few steps away, rifle raised, his face pale in the moonlight. His eyes darted between her and the empty space where her brother had stood. Empty. He was gone again. Alvarez's voice cracked. There was no one there. Her silence betrayed her. Her world collapsed. What happens when silence becomes heavier than truth? The squad moved at first light, leaving the ruined village behind, their boots crunching over ash and broken glass. She walked in their midst, but her mind was still trapped in the night. His words haunted her like a wound that wouldn't close, because you chose them. The commander set a relentless pace, as if running from ghosts he wouldn't admit existed. Alvarez stayed close to her side, his silence louder than any accusation. He had seen her speaking to someone who wasn't there. He had heard the tremor in her voice, but he hadn't told the commander, not yet. And that silence, his silence, was as dangerous as hers. By midday, the squad crested a ridge overlooking the basin they were meant to cross. It stretched wide and barren, a flat wound of sand and rock, hemmed in by hills on all sides. A perfect kill box. The commander ordered a halt, scanning the terrain with binoculars. His jaw tightened. "They'll hit us here," he said simply. Alvarez swore under his breath. The others shifted uneasily, weapons raised, eyes scanning horizons that felt too quiet. She dropped to one knee, setting her rifle across the ridge, her scope searching every shadow. And in the distance, there. Movement. Shadows along the far ridge, dozens, maybe more. Her breath caught, her chest tightened. Among them she thought she saw him again, just a flicker of his stance, unmistakable even at this distance. Her finger brushed the trigger, instinct begging her to take the shot. End it now. Silence the ghost haunting her. But she froze. Her brother, her blood. The commander's voice cut through her paralysis. Positions. They'll be on us in minutes. The squad dug in, spreading across the ridge, rifles braced, eyes hard. Alvarez sat up beside her, his breathing rough, his gaze sliding toward her more than once. He didn't trust what he'd seen the night before. He didn't trust her silence. The first shots came like thunder. The basin erupted in chaos. Figures surged from the far ridge, moving with discipline, covering one another, advancing in waves. This wasn't the chaos of desperate fighters. It was trained, calculated, led. Led by him. She fired, her rifle steady, dropping one after another. The world narrowed to muzzle flashes, the scream of bullets slicing the air, the sting of dust on her face. The squad fought like lions on the edge of collapse, every shot a gamble, every second a gift. But she couldn't stop glancing toward the figure she couldn't name aloud. Her brother, commanding with ruthless precision. His arm gestures cut the battlefield like blades, sending men forward, pulling them back, shifting the tide like a conductor of violence. Every shot she didn't take at him was a betrayal to her squad, and every shot she considered was a betrayal to herself. The basin became a graveyard. Bodies littered the sand, blood soaking into dust that swallowed everything without care. The squad held, but barely. Alvarez took a round across his arm, blood streaking his sleeve. Another soldier collapsed with a scream, clutching his side, dragged back behind cover. The commander's face was stone, but his eyes burned with fury. He shouted orders sharp as gunfire, forcing them to fight beyond exhaustion. And then the tide shifted. The enemy began to pull back, slipping into the far hills with practiced retreat, not rooted, not broken, just finished, as if they had achieved what they came for. The basin fell silent again, smoke hanging low, the taste of blood thick in the air. The commander slammed his rifle down against the rock, his voice raw with rage. "They're not random. They're not scattered tribes. Someone is uniting them, someone who knows how to fight like us. His gaze swept over the squad, searching, daring anyone to answer. No one spoke, but Alvarez's eyes slid, almost unconsciously to her, and she felt it like a blade between her ribs. That night they camped in the shadow of a canyon wall, their bodies broken, their spirits cracking. The wounded groaned softly. Alvarez sat pale and sweating with his bandaged arm, and the commander scribbled furiously into his field book, muttering about strategy and betrayal. She sat apart as always, her rifle across her knees, her eyes fixed on the fire that burned too low. Her silence was a weight none of them could carry for her. Alvarez finally broke it. "You have to tell me," he whispered, moving closer, his face ghostlit by flames. "Last night, who were you talking to?" Her throat locked, her breath faltered. "Don't lie to me," he pressed, voice shaking. "I saw your lips move, I heard you, and today you froze when you saw him, didn't you?" Her heart pounded so loud she thought the others would hear it. She shook her head, too quickly, too desperately. Alvarez's voice cracked. "If you know who's leading them, if you know, then Malik died for nothing. Do you get that? Nothing." The name stabbed her like shrapnel. Malik, his grave already forgotten by the dust, his promise she had sworn to keep. Her silence screamed louder than any denial. Alvarez recoiled, his eyes wide, horrified by the truth her lips refused to speak. "God, it's true." His whisper was broken, but sharp enough to cut. Before she could reach for him, before she could beg with her eyes, the commander's shadow loomed. "What's true?" His voice was steel, his gaze merciless. Alvarez froze, she froze. The fire crackled, the canyon groaned in the wind. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally Alvarez shook his head, swallowing the truth like poison. Nothing, just grief talking. The commander studied them both, suspicion hardening his features, then turned away with a grunt. Alvarez's eyes met hers across the fire. There was no forgiveness there, only fear, only the growing certainty that her silence would break them all. Sleep came like a curse. But in the dead of night, when the others lay still, she woke to a sound that chilled her blood. A voice. His voice. Her brother. Closer than ever, whispering through the canyon shadows. "Choose, sister, them or me." Her breath trembled, her hands shook. She rose, stepping into the dark, heart hammering like it would break free of her chest. The canyon swallowed her, shadows twisting into shapes that weren't there. And then he emerged. Her brother, alive, real, close enough to touch. His face gaunt but burning, his eyes alive with fire that consumed everything. He reached for her hand. "Come home." Her lips parted, no sound came. Her silence was a scream she couldn't escape. Behind her, a voice broke it. "Alvarez." "Commander," he shouted, "over here." She spun, horror slicing through her veins. Alvarez stood at the edge of the firelight, his rifle raised, not at the shadows but at her. At her. The squad stirred awake, weapons grabbing, confusion igniting into chaos. Her brother vanished again into the dark, swallowed like a phantom. But his final words lingered, carving themselves into her soul. "Choose." And now everyone was staring at her. Her silence couldn't protect her anymore. How long can silence protect you before it destroys you? The canyon was colder than night should have been, the air sharp and heavy with breathless tension. Shadows stretched long across the fire, every flicker turning faces into masks. They were all awake now, all watching her. Her rifle rested across her lap, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Alvarez still had his rifle raised, his face pale with fury, betrayal etched deep into his eyes. The commander stood like a statue, every line of him taut with suspicion. "What's going on?" he demanded, voice like iron grinding against stone. Alvarez's chest heaved. "She's been hiding something. I saw her talking to him, to someone out there." Murmurs rippled through the squad, confusion, fear. The wounded stirred, groaning softly, their pain merging with unease. The commander's eyes drilled into her. Is that true? Her throat locked, the fire crackled. The night pressed in, demanding her answer. She shook her head, too quickly, too desperately. The commander's voice sharpened. Answer me. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. Her silence was louder than any confession. Alvarez spat, his voice cracking under grief and rage. I saw him, the one leading them, the one who killed Malik. She knows him. Don't you see? That's why she freezes, why she... Enough, the commander barked, the canyon echoing his word. The squad fell into a tense hush. Only the fire snapped, breaking the silence that suffocated them all. The commander's gaze burned into her. If you know something, soldier, you tell me now. Lives depend on it. Her heart pounded, her chest ached. Words clawed at her throat, desperate to break free. It's my brother, he's alive, he's leading them. But she couldn't. Because if she spoke it aloud, it would become real. And once it was real, she couldn't take it back. Her silence stretched too long. The commander's jaw tightened. His voice dropped to a deadly calm. Then until I know where your loyalties lie, you're a liability. The words hit harder than any bullet. She felt the squad's eyes shift, the distance growing even though they sat only feet away. She was no longer one of them. She was something else, something dangerous. Alvarez lowered his rifle, but his glare stayed sharp. He turned away as if he couldn't bear to look at her. The commander gave the order like it was nothing. She stays under watch. No one speaks to her unless I say so. At dawn, we move. The fire burned low, the canyon colder than before. She sat in silence, her chest hollow, her body numb. Around her, the squad avoided her eyes. Alvarez didn't sit near her. The commander wrote in his book, never once glancing her way. Her silence had protected her for so long. Now it had chained her. Hours dragged by. Sleep didn't come. The stars above felt sharp enough to cut. And then the whisper. His whisper. Her brother. Closer than ever, threading through the canyon walls. See how they turn on you. You are nothing to them. To me, you are blood. To me, you belong. Her breath caught. Her hands clenched the rifle. She wanted to rise, to run to him, to finally break the chains of silence. But a shadow shifted nearby, one of the squad watching her, his rifle across his knees, his eyes heavy but awake. She stayed frozen. The whisper came again, softer, like a hand on her shoulder. Choose, sister, choose before they force you. The night crawled. Dawn finally came, pale and merciless. The commander led them out of the canyon, his orders curt, his trust fractured. They moved in silence, every step grinding the wound deeper. She walked at the rear now, Alvarez ahead but never looking back. The squad's circle no longer included her. By midday, they reached high ground overlooking a valley where their mission target waited, a supply depot hidden among ruins, guarded by enemy fighters. The objective was clear: destroy it, cripple their logistics, and survive. But as she looked through her scope, her blood froze. Her brother was there. Not just leading, commanding, standing at the center of the enemy like a king on his throne, his gestures directing every movement. Her hands shook so badly, she almost dropped the rifle. Alvarez's voice whispered beside her, bitter and sharp. You see him, don't you? You know him. Her silence was answer enough. Alvarez cursed, pulling back from the scope. His voice was a growl of grief. Malik's blood is on your silence, and if you keep it up, ours will be too. Before she could turn, before she could beg him not to, he stood. He went to the commander, whispered in his ear. The commander's expression didn't change, but his eyes flicked to her, cold, measuring. The squad prepared for the assault, explosives checked, weapons loaded, hearts steeled for another storm. And she sat frozen, her world collapsing. When the first shot rang out, the valley exploded. Gunfire tore the air, smoke and dust rising like storms. The squad charged forward, Alvarez among them, fury in his every step. She hesitated, her eyes locked on her brother. And for the first time he looked back, not with challenge, not with hate, with sorrow. He raised his rifle, but not at her, at Alvarez. Her heart ripped apart. She screamed, not with words, but with action. She leapt from cover, firing at the shooters around her brother, cutting them down before they could strike. Her shots saved Alvarez, but in doing so, they shielded her brother as well. The battlefield didn't care. The squad didn't care. All they saw was her saving the enemy leader. All they saw was betrayal. Gunfire raged, the mission spiraled, but above it all, her silence was finally broken, not by words, but by the choice she had just made. And it was the choice that could end them all. Why did the radio cut out just when they needed it most? 1 second the static carried voices, distant, scattered, but alive. The next only silence, the kind that presses against your ears until it feels like the world itself has gone hollow. She tightened her grip on the receiver, eyes narrowing at the faint glow of the signal light that stubbornly refused to blink. Dead line, dead connection, or worse, dead comrades. Her chest rose sharply, but she forced her breath into steady rhythm. Panic was a disease out here, one that spread faster than bullets. She lowered the radio and caught the glance of Private Lee, sitting against the wall, knees up, hands restless. He was young, too young, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. He whispered, "They're gone, aren't they?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she crouched beside him, her shadow stretching across the dim space where they had taken shelter. The firelight from outside bled through the cracks of broken stone, painting her face in half-light. She put a hand on his shoulder, steady. "Not gone, just silent. There's a difference." But she wasn't sure. Every second of silence pressed against her chest like a weight. The mission had already gone off course, and they were too deep to turn back. She thought of the map burned into her memory, the bridge they were meant to secure, the convoy that depended on them clearing the way. And above all, she thought of her brother, his face, his voice the day he shipped out and never came back. She had promised herself no one else's sister would carry that weight if she could help it. Her hand slipped into her pocket and touched the folded letter she carried always. Words written in a handwriting she knew better than her own. Faded, creased, fragile. She closed her eyes, drew strength, and then stood. From outside came a sound. Not a shot, not an explosion, worse. Footsteps, careful, deliberate, someone moving like they belonged here. She signaled with 2 fingers and the team froze. Every heart seemed to stop in unison. Then a shadow crossed the doorway, tall, armed, not theirs. She didn't rush. Her finger hovered on the trigger, but her mind raced. Was it a scout? The first wave? If she fired too soon, she risked giving them away. If she waited, she risked everything else. And then that moment stretched into eternity. The man turned his head, eyes just catching the fire's glow. He saw them. Recognition flared. The crack of her rifle was louder than she intended. The shadow dropped, a body slamming hard against stone, but the sound carried, echoed, and now there would be more. Private Lee flinched. Morales cursed under her breath. The silence had shattered. The hunt had begun. She didn't let them spiral. She stepped into the center of the room, voice low, calm, but sharp enough to cut through fear. "Listen to me. This isn't the end. This is the moment. They think they've trapped us. They're wrong. We move now." Her words steadied them, even as her heart thundered in her chest. As they slipped out through the rear passage, the heat of the burning horizon painted the night sky in shades of red and orange. She led them down the rubble-strewn path, her eyes locked on the road ahead. The convoy, the bridge, the mission, her brother's letter burning in her pocket like a reminder of everything at stake. But as they moved, a thought clawed at her. What if the silence on the radio wasn't just static? What if it was a warning, one she hadn't understood? She didn't share it. Some truths had to wait. Not yet. What was waiting for them at the bridge? None of them spoke it aloud, but the question hung over every step. The road stretched like a scar through the valley, smoke curling in the distance, the firelit horizon shifting as if the world itself was burning. Every crunch of gravel beneath their boots felt too loud, too final. She walked ahead of them, shoulders squared, rifle steady. Her figure, tall and unyielding, cut against the flames behind. Backlit by fire, unshaken by the chaos ahead. But inside, her chest ached. Each heartbeat carried the weight of every choice she had made tonight. The silence she kept, the orders she gave, the lives that still followed her. The bridge came into view, skeletal in the fireglow, its steel ribs towering, its concrete scarred from battles past. And there, against the shadows, movement, figures, too many. Enemy uniforms, rifles slung, waiting. She raised her hand, halting her team. Their breaths came quick, sharp. Private Lee swallowed hard, his face pale in the flicker of fire. Morales muttered a prayer in Spanish under her breath. Even Sergeant Davis, always stoic, clenched his jaw tight, his eyes darting over the sight before them. She crouched low, scanning, counting. Too many for a straight fight, too many for a clean escape. Her radio was still dead weight on her belt, silent, useless. And for a moment she let herself feel it, the fear, raw and cold, rising in her throat. What if this was the end? What if she led them here to die? Her hand brushed the folded letter in her pocket, her brother's words, his memory, the promise she had made at his grave. She breathed out slowly, grounding herself. Fear was a shadow, it only lived if you fed it. She turned to her team. Their faces were lit by the fire, waiting, searching for an answer in her eyes. "We're not here to die," she said softly, but with steel in her voice. "We're here to finish what we started. We hold that bridge or no one makes it home." For a moment, silence. Then Davis gave a single nod. Morales gripped her weapon tighter. Lee, trembling, drew in a breath and whispered, "For home." They moved. Low, fast, shadows slipping closer. The first shots cracked like whips in the night, shattering whatever hope of stealth remained. Muzzle flashes sparked like lightning across the field. She dropped to one knee, sighted, fired. A man crumpled. Another stumbled back. Bullets tore through air, ringing against steel beams. The world exploded in noise and chaos. But she didn't waver. Every shot she took was precise, measured. Every command she shouted cut through the chaos. They pressed forward inch by bloody inch, until the team made cover beneath the skeletal frame of the bridge. Yet it wasn't enough. More soldiers poured from the shadows. The odds swelled against them. And for the first time tonight, she realized the truth she had buried under duty, under silence. This mission was never about survival. It was about sacrifice. Her brother's voice echoed in her mind, words from the letter she carried. Courage isn't about living without fear. It's about choosing who you carry through it. She turned to her team. The youngest, the strongest, the ones who still had futures beyond this night. Lee's wide, terrified eyes met hers. She gave him the faintest smile. A reassurance, a goodbye. "Lee," she said, pressing the radio into his hands. "You take it. You'll find the signal again. You'll call them in." His mouth opened to protest, but she silenced him with a look. Morales's breath caught, realization dawning. Davis's jaw tightened, understanding without words. She stood, stepping out from the steel shadows into the firelight. Her figure framed by flame, unshaken by the chaos. Rifle raised, movement sure. She drew the enemy's eyes, their fire, their fury. Every shot she took was an anchor, every step forward a distraction carved with blood. Behind her the team moved. She heard their boots, their shouts, their desperate scramble toward safety. And still she pressed on, her body screaming, her chest burning, her strength bleeding out with each second. The bridge thundered with gunfire, but her focus narrowed. One target, then another, then another. She was fire, she was steel, she was silence breaking. Until the moment came, her rifle empty, her body failing, the world slowing into a blur of fire and ash. She dropped to one knee, vision tunneling, breath ragged, but her eyes never broke. She saw them, her team across the bridge alive, running, carrying the mission forward, carrying hope, carrying her promise. Her last breath came not as fear, but as peace. Her brother's letter pressed against her heart, its words living now through her choices. The enemy's fire closed in, drowning everything in thunder. But even as the world fell, her figure remained, etched against the burning horizon, unshaken, unbowed. And when silence finally returned, it was not empty. It was heavy, sacred, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.